What do the air you're breathing right now, the pressure inside a car tire, and a giant hot air balloon all have in common? Well, it turns out they're all playing by the same simple, elegant set of rules. Today, we're going to dive into the invisible world of what we call ideal gases to figure out what those rules are. Okay, but let's start with a real-world puzzle. You've probably seen this, right? You get on a plane, pull out a bag of chips, and it's puffed up like it's about to pop. What is going on there? I promise you, it's not some kind of airplane magic. It's physics. And by the time we're done here, you'll know exactly why that happens. So, to figure out that chip bag mystery, we have to start with a simplified idea, something called an ideal gas. Look, the real world is complicated, it's messy. So what scientists do is they create these sort of perfect models, like a blueprint, to help us understand the basic rules that are running the show behind the scenes. So what is an ideal gas, really? Imagine a gas that's, well, a perfect student. It follows all the rules all the time, no exceptions. It's a hypothetical gas, right? It doesn't actually exist out there. But it's an absolutely crucial tool because it gives us a baseline to understand how real gases work in the real world. Now, for this whole ideal gas game to work, we have to agree on 5 basic rules. First, the molecules themselves are just teeny tiny dots. We pretend they take up 0 space. Second, they don't interact with each other at all. No attractions, no repulsions. They're totally aloof. Third, they're always moving, constantly and randomly, just zipping all over the place. Fourth, when they do bump into each other or the walls, it's a perfect bounce. No energy is lost, like a super bouncy ball. And finally, and this is the big one, how fast they're moving, their kinetic energy, is all about the temperature. Hotter means faster. Okay, so with those 5 ground rules set, we can now look at the 3 big laws that come out of this model. These are the foundational rules for how gases behave. First up, we have Boyle's law. This was figured out by a guy named, you guessed it, Robert Boyle. He wanted to know what's the deal between the pressure of a gas and the amount of space it takes up, its volume, assuming you keep the temperature steady. And what he found is this really simple relationship. They're like 2 ends of a seesaw. When you push down on one, the other goes up. So if you increase the pressure on a gas, its volume gets smaller. And if you let up on the pressure, its volume gets bigger. The balloon example's perfect, right? You squeeze it, that's adding pressure, and the balloon shrinks. Simple as that. That's Boyle's law. All right, let's put this to the test. Let's say we have a gas that takes up 2 cubic decimeters of space, and it's under 100 kilopascals of pressure. So what happens to its volume if we double the pressure to 200 kilopascals? Just based on what we just said, what's your gut feeling? Let's look at the math, which is actually super straightforward. The formula is just PV1 equals PV2. So the pressure and volume you start with, multiplied together, has to equal the pressure and volume you end up with. You plug in the numbers we have, 100 times 2 equals 200 times what? And yep, you solve for that new volume and you get exactly 1.0 cubic decimeter. It works perfectly. We doubled the pressure and the volume got cut in half. Okay, so that's what happens when you mess with pressure. But what if we change the temperature instead? This brings us to rule number 2, Charles's law. A guy named Jacques Charles looked into the connection between a gas's volume and its temperature, but this time keeping the pressure the same. Now this one's different from Boyle's law. Instead of a seesaw, this time they move together in the same direction. Heat a gas up, its volume gets bigger. Cool it down, its volume shrinks. The perfect example is a hot air balloon, right? You heat the air inside, it expands, gets less dense than the air outside, and whoosh, up it goes. Just one little catch here for the math. You've got to use Kelvin for your temperature, not Celsius or Fahrenheit. So let's try another quick problem. Say you have a gas with a volume of 500 cubic centimeters and it's at a pretty normal 27 degrees Celsius. What happens to its volume if we crank the heat up to 127 degrees Celsius? We know it's going to get bigger, but by how much exactly? Well, first you got to convert to Kelvin, right? So that's 300 Kelvin and 400 Kelvin. The volume increases proportionally, so the new volume ends up being around 667 cubic centimeters. This direct link between temperature and a gas's properties is really cool, and it brings us to our third and final key rule, the pressure law. So what happens if you link pressure and temperature, but this time you keep the volume from changing? You lock it in a rigid box. And you probably guessed it, it's just like Charles's law. It's another direct relationship. If the temperature goes up, the pressure goes up. If the temperature goes down, the pressure goes down. This is something you see all the time with your car tires. You're supposed to check the pressure when the tires are cold, right? That's because once you start driving, they heat up and the pressure inside shoots way up. All right, so we've got these three separate laws. One for pressure and volume, one for volume and temperature, and one for pressure and temperature. It feels like they should all be connected, right? Like, what if we could roll them all up into one single, powerful master equation? I mean, think about it. We've just shown that pressure is tied to volume, and that volume is tied to temperature, and that pressure is also tied to temperature. They're all part of the same system. There has to be a way to put it all together. And there is. This is it. PV equals nRT, the ideal gas equation. This little thing is a giant in chemistry and physics. It's so elegant because it takes all three of those laws we just talked about and wraps them up into one neat package. So let's decode this real quick. P is pressure, V is volume. We know those. T is temperature, in Kelvin, of course. Now, what about N and R? Well, N is just how much gas you have, the number of moles. And R is just a special number, the ideal gas constant, that makes all the math work out with the units. But the main thing to see here is how pressure, volume, and temperature are all connected in one beautiful formula. Okay, this is great. We have the laws, we have the master equation. We know what happens. But why does it happen? Why do gases behave this way? To get that answer, we need to zoom in, way, way in, down to the level of the individual molecules. And this brings us to something called the kinetic theory of gases. The main idea is actually really simple. That thing we call pressure, it's literally just billions and billions of tiny gas molecules constantly crashing into the walls of whatever container they're in. And temperature? That's just a measure of how fast those molecules are zipping around. So higher temperature means they're moving faster and they're hitting the walls harder and more often. So let's connect the dots. Let's use this theory to explain one of our laws. Why, for example, does the pressure inside a sealed can shoot up when you heat it? Think of an aerosol can. There's a reason they have a warning not to leave them in a hot car. It's a perfect chain reaction. You add heat, which is energy. That energy makes the molecules inside move faster. Since they're trapped in the can, faster movement means they're going to slam into the inner walls more often and with more force each time they hit. And what is more frequent, more forceful collisions? That's the definition of higher pressure. See, it all connects. But, and this is a big but, we have to remember that this whole beautiful explanation is based on our perfect, imaginary, ideal gas. So now it's time to come back to the real world and ask, when does this perfect model stop working? Remember those first two rules we set up for our ideal gas game? We said the molecules themselves take up no space and that they don't attract each other. Well, in the real world, of course they do. Usually, it doesn't matter much. But if you put a real gas under super high pressure, you're squishing those molecules so close together that suddenly their actual size starts to matter. And when they're that cozy, the tiny little attractive forces between them, which we ignored, start to become a real fact. And that leads us to the most important point about all of this. Real gases act most like our perfect ideal gas when the temperature is high and the pressure is low. Why? Because under those conditions, the molecules are really far apart and moving really fast, so their own size and attractions don't really matter. And that brings us all the way back to our bag of chips. When you're on an airplane, the air pressure in the cabin is lower than it is on the ground. And what did Boyle's law tell us? When the pressure outside goes down, the volume of the gas inside the sealed bag has to go up. And that is why it puffs up. It's Boyle's law in action. So you see, the ideal gas law is this amazing tool. It's a simplification, sure. It's not perfect, but it's an incredibly powerful way to understand and predict how the invisible world around us works. And that kind of leaves us with one last, bigger question to think about. What other perfect models do we use all the time, maybe without even realizing it? In economics, in psychology, maybe even in our own day-to-day lives. What simplifications do we rely on to make sense of a very complex world?